All right, moving to our action agenda this evening. The first item is professional staff development opportunities, code GCL-R. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak on this item?
Thank you. Mr. Lee, at our previous meeting, I think had introduced this particular topic, and it deals with, under our current policy, our employees are able to receive $600 per year towards tuition reimbursement. And the request here, we would like to raise that amount to $1,400 per year and do away with the advanced degree program as previously discussed at the last work session. Mr. Lee has attached on here the regulation for this. He highlights in one area uses frontline rather than unified talent. Unified talent was the name of the program that we used prior to frontline. So he wants to update the policy there. And there's a few other just clerical type of things in here on the next page. But instead of having either the 600, he's requesting to go to a $1,400 for tuition assistance, and then also no longer have the $1,800. Now the $1,800 itself actually came with strings attached, and that was if you receive that amount, then you commit to the division for several years of those type of things. If not, you return that. This particular account, from my memory, has $55,000. Each year it's budgeted for $55,000, and traditionally we've had funding left in that particular account, sometimes significant. $600, years ago it was $400 and it moved up to $600, but the realization of paying for a college class of $600 it's very difficult to fund. And this is a regulation, so therefore the regulation itself can be approved by our superintendent. However, this particular one would affect funding, money, and so forth, and that's why it's coming before the board for an action item if you so choose to make it from 600 to eliminate an 800 and just go with the 1,400.
And the one thing that we were talking about in cabinet was making this active starting July 1, because we wouldn't want it to be unfair to people that if they got a reimbursement of $600 in the fall, but now we're reimbursing somebody, unless we went back and said, okay, if you receive $600 reimbursement, bring us the reimbursement and we will get you the rest of the money. But what if somebody misses that, or, so that would be one thing that you would want to consider when approving this, and that's what we discussed, is that it's always good when a policy such as this sometimes takes place at the beginning of the next year or regulation. But if the board wants us to try to work through that, then we would have to work through that or push that out there, and then it's up to the employee to bring that to us. And then if we roll into next year, then they've missed that boat too, because we're not going to pay for something that happened last year out of next year's funds. So, there could be a chance that some employees don't miss, that they do miss that opportunity. So just throwing that out there.
Any questions for Mr. Seth on this? So the suggested motion would be to have an effective date July 1, 2024. Is there a motion?
I move that the Warren County School Board approve the changes to code GCL-R, allowing individual employees to receive up to $1,400 per year for tuition reimbursement purposes, and remove the advanced degree program effective July 1st, 2024.
Is there a second? A second. Any discussion on that? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no. Thank you, Mr. Schmidt. Next up, we have Mr. Helmick with the ground services invitation to bid.
Good evening. Warren County Public Schools went out for bid with IFB 2024-001 for grounds maintenance services. Description of the bid included mowing, weed eating, trimming, shrub pruning, cleaning up of debris, and blowing off clippings on hard surfaces. Mowing frequency is 3 times per month or every 10 days. For the facilities, Warren County Middle School, Skyline Middle School, Ressie Jeffries, Ella J. Barber, A.S. Rhodes, E. Wilson Memorial, E. Wilson, LFK, BRTC, and Transportation Department. Bids were received and opened on Friday, March 8th, 2024. We received 8 bids, and Law Enforcement LLC was the low bid at $59,220. The period of the performance will be from April 1, 2024 through June 1, 2025, with up to 4 one-year renewal opportunities.
Any questions for Mr. Helmick?
Was the public given a chance to comment on this one?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Is there even anyone in the public that wants to talk about this? Thank you for reminding me, Mr. Valentine.
Yeah, just a technicality, that's all.
Is this a local company? I know last time
They are out of Bunker Hill, West Virginia, right on the other side of Winchester.
And you feel good about them?
I feel very good about them. Their references were incredible. They have some huge contracts. It's really good. Just to let everyone know that last year's contract was awarded to Help LLC for the amount of $82,228.44. They wanted a 20 to 25% increase this year to come back. So I told Dr. Ballinger that I think we're going to be around $100,000 for mowing this year. So this was a great surprise. And they look to be an excellent company. It's a retired law enforcement agent who opened this company. It'll be good.
Is there,
No, that's great.
is there a motion on this?
I move that the Warren County School Board approves the contract with Law Enforcement LLC in the amount of $59,220 for ground maintenance services and authorizes the superintendent to execute the contract.
Is there a second? A second. Any discussion on this? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Thank you, Mr. Helmick.
Thank you.
Well, it's going to be, okay, before we bring Mr. Smith up, is there anyone here that would like to speak on the award construction contract for E. Wilson Morrison Elementary School Janitorium? Okay, Mr. Smith. Good.
Before this, I'd just like to thank Mr. Helmut for all the hard work he does on this to go out for those RFPs and all the extra work. It saved us a tremendous amount of money, actually. So I'm very thankful to you, bro. The next item that we have here is to award the construction contract for E. Wilson Morrison Elementary School for the gymatorium. On January 18, 2024, Warren County Public Schools received 2 bids for the conversion of the E. Wilson Morrison Elementary School auditorium into a gymatorium. The low bid was from Lance Construction Company of Winchester for $288,200. The bid includes a $50,000 for a contingency fund and $10,000 for door hardware. The project is scheduled to start in April 2024 and conclude mid-August 2024. Funding for the project was approved by the Warren County Board of Supervisors on their March 12, 2024 meeting, and that money came from the Capital Reserve Schools Fund. The additional $20,000 approved would be for the estimated cost of the special inspections, which is the responsibility of the owner. There should be a bid sheet, and today we were able to, Lance, our attorneys have looked over the contract. Lance has agreed, our attorneys have agreed, so we're just asking for the ability for our superintendent to sign the contract.
Any questions for Mr. Smith on this?
I have a question. Which budget year does this fall into? When we were talking about the budget earlier, you mentioned some of this in next year's budget, but if we're approving it now, I mean, it's going to...
This would be coming out of our current funding that we currently have. Now, we're going to cross over at a July date, but realistically, I would see this coming from this year's budget. And some of this, I'm sorry.
I just have a question real quick.
Yes, sir.
Is the county paying those receipts for us?
Yes.
Because, so it's not really coming out of our budget.
Yeah, you're correct, sir.
If it's not coming out of our budget because we are passing that to the county.
Yes.
So we don't have anything as far as that we have to pay.
It's their funding. I heard the question, and I interpreted it. I mean, the money is actually from the county's capital reserves, which is identified in the school's fund. So that money and so forth carries over into the next year. So as far as our current budget, it is not, it's not part of our operational budget. It is money that has been put aside over the years as a capital improvement fund for the county. So realistically, it's taken out of a fund that continues to carry over. So,
The reason I was at, it was on the, capital improvements page of the budget, just you talked about it as if it was something that was driving the budget for next year. If it
But it's
is.
savings too, like this is.
part of
most
this is
budget.
also the savings. Because with our contingency fund and technology, the contingency fund, realistically, there's a pot of money per se for this particular project at LFK. So in my mind and on a piece of paper, I've identified a lot of the savings we can come from the contingency funds. But really, that is just more of an accounting area that I'm placing it. It could come from part of the technology fund. It could, but I foresee, I'm hopeful that with the contingency fund, that there will be funds available there to help to offset this amount that we have here and possibly even cover it. It just, contingency is just that. It's contingent upon what we go through as we go through the process.
Okay, thank you.
Will it be a school board check that pays Lance or a County of Warren check that pays Lance?
The check, I would assume that this particular thing, Mr. Valentine, would run through very similar to the way that we do LFK. The money itself has been appropriated for this project, so it would be very similar to when they appropriated the funding last even, I think, perhaps, for the ending payments of the LFK project, that we would receive the payments, we would cut the check, but the funds have been appropriated from the county.
Okay, so is the county giving us the appropriation and putting it in our account? Because I know what we talked about is that the county we were sending some of those bills down to the county and they were paying. That's what we need to be clear on.
Yeah, the way it was written up, the request to the county was that they would transfer the money to our capital improvement fund when we presented checks and invoices that were approved. They aren't going to transfer it lump sum, but on an as-needed basis to cover the invoices we received during the project. Is that
That's correct.
the way I?
It's basically, I'm approved.
So then what's happening is, right now our capital improvement account has $0 in it. The money's sitting on the county. When we receive a bill, we tell them we have a bill. They will take it from this money, from this account and put it in our CIP, and then we pay the bill.
And then it goes back to
Which then
zero.
goes
And
back
then
to
it goes
zero.
back to zero. So it's, yeah, so it's really, it's, and I don't even think that we would even have to ask for, an appropriation
Well,
amount.
they've already
They've already
approved that.
appropriated that?
They've already
Okay, so-
appropriated it.
So, yeah, so to answer your, so it's a little confusing there. It's not really that, it is, I guess, we are paying for it then, if that's the case, that's happening, but we're not getting that money. It's not sitting in our account. We don't have control over it right now.
Okay.
But
Valid.
the point is that the reason that this project's being able to move forward is because Lance has done such a wonderful job with LFK, had a schedule, under budget, and so this is not going to be an additional ask of the county taxpayers. This is not driving any of the potential tax increase for the county. This
correct. This is funding that's already in
Yes.
your savings account.
This-
Yeah.
This is money that we already have.
Yeah. So they appropriated it. Yes. Any other questions?
And then, we passed this tonight, we've made the plan for what to do with the seats.
Yes, I could brief
So-
on that. On the seats that would be inside the auditorium, those are some of historical type seating and those type of things. Once this is approved tonight, I have the contract already drawn up. Lance has already signed their part. Dr. Ballinger will sign on behalf of the school division. Mr. Helmick, his staff will start tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Okay?
We have the warehouse space lined up.
Yes, we have warehouse space lined up to take the chairs to, and then we will have time to actually set up an auction. We've talked to, Mr. Helmick has spoken with the owner, and they are okay with us having an auction there at that particular property. So this allows us, it's great community partnership that we have here, so we're very thankful. But at the same time, it allows us to also put something together that we could actually, instead of just being completely rushed and trying to get this thing through, we have a place to store these. So we have some time to put a campaign together to be able to sell these. The funding that would come back in from those particular chairs, we would use those to help the school with some portable type chairs, very maybe similar to those that are behind you, or perhaps those are sitting, that we would use there for it to be a gymnatorium.
But yeah, I want to just say that Rob McDougall, when it was Murphy Theater, huge thank you to him for that space.
Is there a motion on this?
I move approval be given to award the E. Wilson Morrison Elementary Project to Lance Construction Company of Winchester in the amount of $288,200, and the superintendent to authorize to sign the contract subject to final review and approval from our school board attorney.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Any discussion on this? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Thank you, Mr. Smith. I think before we go into the budget, we could have 5 minutes for everyone to stand up for a second. Okay.
Wind was something.
Okay, I think we'll get back to our meeting this evening. Next up, we have the superintendent's proposed budget. Is there anyone here that would like to speak on that? Okay. Well, we've had Dr. Ballinger's presentation already. This was all us for discussion at this point.
So the one other document that Mr. Valentine did add today, it breaks it down into the categories that has to be submitted to the county, so that is on there. So it breaks down categorically how that all breaks out, that big lump sum. So that you do have that. That was not added into my presentation, it was added to board docs.
In your full proposed budget, has those additional positions at the bottoms?
The communications director, no, those aren't in there.
Those are not,
Those are not
right,
in there.
right. So that would be something additional, like,
Yeah.
define it.
Yeah, it's a, this is the one that's just had
Addition to the goals. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that before we. This seems good.
So what we're discussing the draft. I mean, obviously, we're not finalizing because it has to go back to the board of supervisors, right? So I would say, well, I think we thought about the communications so that you don't have to hear in the FOIA discussion today. If that becomes, even if it's a 25% of that person's job, it seems like that would be well worth it. I don't think FOIA is going away. And so that's the only way. It's not even about the money. Maybe the money charges can help fund this person's position, but I think we need a communications person in there. We just, so however we get it in there, I think we should do that.
So you're thinking maybe modify the budget to add that particular position?
Yes, I'm not familiar enough with the other positions, the reading assistants that are needed, but I do know from a short period of time, a communications person would be definitely valuable.
And we've had this discussion, I mean, I think since day one that I came on the board, we had this discussion about the need for that. So I certainly support that 100%. Well, it's increased now. If we're going to tie it to FOIA, we have one player where you sign.
Yeah.
So who is interviewing and hiring the communications director if this communications director is what is for us? Like, are we allowing the other administration and staff to pick out who's communicating for us as a board? Are we taking the hands-off approach to the hiring?
Well, the communications director would be under my staff.
Right, so the flip side of this is that the communications director could be, this is my concern, we get-go, as a spin doctor.
Well, I think it would be a position just like any other position of the county. It would be up to the superintendent and his staff to hire, and that is not, we're not involved in the hiring process.
We ultimately approve it.
We do. We do approve it, correct. But we're not involved in the process. We could approve the job description.
Right.
We look at that and we approve the job description, but the process of the person being hired would be, I'm assuming, similar to how you've hired other equivalent positions in the county through a
Dirt committee.
committee approach.
And so on the flip side of that too, though, we heard tonight about the IAs making apparently less than minimum wage, which I'm not sure how's that legal? Is that true? That I don't have their salaries front of me.
I think it starts at 17. I pulled it up when we were looking at it, and I saw that it started at 17, and I don't know I didn't crunch the
I have to
numbers.
calculate that out.
I didn't crunch the numbers, but. And I think also just adding that line item now to our draft budget we haven't created what the job description looks like. I mean, that's trying to still get this budget approved and get the money allocated to us.
So, if you're going to add that to the budget, the recommendation would be just to, you have the number there in front of you for the labor number, and then you could just look at adding that position to it if that's what you're wanting to do.
I know the money gets the right people, and it's built in there, because if we don't do it now, then
Yeah.
we're not going to have it available. Yeah. The year to sound, sorry, we used it, right? So
So-
right now, the number is, are you talking about the ads?
Just let undo that the superintendent's proposed budget be approved as presented, so we could just say,
Well, you will
modify by adding,
Yeah, we don't have to special arts, the numbers right now.
it's not a dollar value, and
This is 101.
it's all in the documents.
Well, but we kind of do have to crunch the numbers
Yeah.
right now, and that's where, like, if we're talking about the IAs not making minimum wage, and we're talking about the possibility of increasing the pay for nurses, and we found out this evening, we were talking about that another sped teacher would be useful over here, and I think that brings up a really valid point of what this discipline issue is costing our district at this point in time. We've got several lawsuits. We've got a communications director that we're looking at hiring specifically because of all the communication issues that have happened with the result of issues within the division. We have taken the legal fees and blown them out of the water. That used to be like a $15,000 expense, and then we added the $30,000 to that towards a full policy rewrite. And now we spent the $55,000 before the holidays even. And I mean, I've got the stack of invoices to Sands Anderson, and God knows it isn't our board that's using the legal services. Our lawyer that we've paid all this money to helped create half of these lawsuits by telling us to shut up, don't tell parents anything. So if we've already exceeded that, next year is the $55,000 even accurate? I mean, should we just continue to expect increased legal fees? So a lot of this, the discipline issue is costing us money. So with the suggestion of hiring an additional person over here to try to help clean that up, not to mention the fact that the discipline issue is costing us staff, which in turn is costing us federal identifications. It's a spiral. We're spiraling down the drain with regard to these discipline issues and the expenses. And then we also have to think about, too, we're not discussing this budget in a vacuum. Currently, the county is facing a $12.2 million additional ask from all the other departments. So if you break that down, if nobody cuts back on their budget, we're looking at a 20-cent increase in taxes, which on an average median home value, you're looking at an additional $600 a year per home, which then we start looking at, okay, we've got fire and rescue needs right now. We're talking about taking from a volunteer fire department to paid fire department. We need a new fire engine. At what point in time, like, we're going to have to pick and choose what things in this community need. Like, what's more valuable, a school bus or a fire engine?
Well, I'm gonna assert that our position as the board is to protect and support our teachers. I don't discredit anything, and that's a tough task for the board of supervisors, but that's their job. You know, we work with them collaboratively, but I think our task is to look at what our needs are for our students, because we are the largest employer. What we do with our students has the most profound effect in our community. So not dismissing any of that. I get it. That's a tough decision for our boards of supervisors.
But we can do our part.
But we can, but we need to, so.
I mean, I look at it as we should put forth the budget that we feel like best supports our students. And we have to realize that with a $12.2 million increase asked, like, we might not get it. They might come right back to us and say, you guys have to cut it by whatever dollars. And then we have to rework this whole thing again. But I think if we don't determine what we think we need and ask for what we think we need, then we're definitely not going to get it, because everybody else is asking for more too.
But if we're considering what our students and our staff needs, I would prefer to put the needs of the students and the staff first ahead of our needs and hire an additional sped teacher or pay the IAs more, rather than selfishly focus on a communications director.
Well, I'm gonna disagree with you there. I don't think it's a selfish focus on us. It's something the county needs. I think every employee here, Buck, needs that. He's working 25 extra hours a week. Our technology's working who knows how many extra hours a week. So I think, you know, there's a lot of needs. We need that special ed teacher. We need all of those things. I don't disagree with that at all. But if you look at 50 surrounding counties, they probably have had a communications person, and that support to our principals will take a load off of our principals. That support to our central office staff will take a load off of them. And we will see the fruits of that. I would certainly assert that.
Well, and taking the FOIA load off hopefully allows the assistant superintendent to do the jobs, and that ties back into discipline. That's what it's getting mostly over. That does get political. This is the one that's trained to do that, to help those.
And that's absolutely where this focus should be. And I think assessing fees to some of these massive FOIAs that are not student related is probably going to kill a lot of those FOIAs. So we already know what the effect of that is going to be.
And so I have a question, since we're talking about budget. If we start requiring the fees, like this might be the simplest, where does that money go to? Like, what do we utilize that money for?
So that would just go
Would
back
that be under
into
the
operations, and that would be listed in, you know, you have that miscellaneous.
But that would go under the miscellaneous, and it would be
Miscellaneous revenue.
used there for, okay.
It would just roll back into the budget, as miscellaneous revenue.
This could help support that position, and it could help do whatever we want.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Well, if we're talking about this, I also want to advocate for the additional reading specialist that's on the bottom of the budget, because as we heard with Ms. Bragg's presentation, we do have some schools that really need extra support in reading, and the VLA is requiring us to add 3 reading specialists, which we are, but I know we've had that recommendation from our staff to add a 4th one. So I think that is also a badly needed position in our district.
And there's I know in the years past, and Dr. Ballinger, maybe you can share this with us a little bit. I know that there is sometimes an opportunity
when there is turnover for some savings to cover, other positions, is it too premature to think about maybe what kind of savings that might also put into the budget at this point, or?
I would say that, yes, it is too premature because you don't know who's going to be replacing those people that
Right.
are leaving.
But there's a lot of different things we could look at still.
Right. The one thing
Potentially.
that you would have to be cognizant of is that if you use teacher turnover or employee turnover to fund other positions, that's an automatic in the next year's budget, because now that funding is taken up, and it's a given going in. So that is something you have to consider.
So we'd have to budget for it now.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Well, I mean, if you use teacher turnover or something in next year, so for instance, like, let's just use the Pathways and Connection Coordinator position that you just created. That is an automatic, that is having, we are moving that forward into next year's budget. That is coming from some of that teacher turnover and things of that nature to help fund that position. So, looking at it, that's how you're rolling that in. Now, I will say, as far as with, the special education position over here, I have been looking at it, talking with Ms. McDonald, because we did have a person leave a teaching position to fill that Pathways and Connection. And that is one thing, if the board is wanting to put a communications director in, then we can actually shift possibly that teacher position over to over here. And that is one thing that I've had a conversation as well.
Right, so if we add the communication specialist here, we could hire an additional.
Yes, you have a vacancy that I've had conversation with Ms. McDonald and Ms. Bonanza about possibly moving that person. So we haven't landed. It's that vacant position.
Yeah, that vacant position, that's one person.
We haven't totally settled on that, but we've had some conversation.
What are everyone's thoughts on the health insurance increase?
I think, what did they say, we've held off on any health insurance increase for, what was it, 7 years?
I don't think it's happened since I've been on the board.
Yeah, and I'd like to stay, we can keep that savings, because that is huge. That's
I know through the private sector, I've paid increases every single year since Obamacare. It's a pretty well accepted thing. This is not making the teachers absorb all of it. We'll be splitting it with them. And that savings would pay for the 3 listed teaching positions on here, the ag teacher, the elementary teacher, and reading specialist. So, and hearing the increased dollar amounts at the work session with the supervisors, it was really a very minimal amount that was passed on each.
Yeah, somewhere in the $20, $23.
Yeah,
or
it's like
something.
$23.
Yeah, I would be for not keeping it. I mean, at some point, you have to, we can't, I mean, if we had an excess of money, we could accept the day, but I mean, it's, at some point, it's like we're being paying more if it's a small amount to add on to the teachers. Again, it was $23. I don't think exactly.
Across the board, from all the taxpayers who would be absorbing this, they are also absorbing their own increase in health insurance every year, year after year. So now they're going to be absorbing their health insurance increase and their own, and now their extra $600+ a month in taxes as well. So, I mean, we offer some of the best health insurance. I mean, it blows my health insurance out of the water.
Yeah, I mean, that's just not, I know personally, I don't want to see that happen. I think we can still get to eventually, because this isn't set in stone. We still have, some different things once we approve this first one, but I think that, I can tell you that's not something I would not like to see put onto our staff as a whole.
Can you clarify, Mr. Valentine? I thought it was a little higher than the 23.
So it does depend upon which plan
Sure.
you're taking. So I think the 23 was the high deductible or the HSA, because right now, currently
It was
it's
a-
zero. And I don't have that information in
Yeah,
front of me, but it's currently it's zero. So the employee or the whatever that plan is, Bud, you want to help me out here?
The high deductible.
The high deductible plan is
health
her
savings
CC account. If we share that, it goes to 23. Now, if you go to the family plan or to a employee plus children plan, that kicks up about $70
Yes.
a month. So now you're looking at a different amount because
And most of our employees have that family plan. Or was it, the employee plus employee only, I think was the most.
Yeah, and then it's different for that. I didn't bring that documentation with me today, and I apologize. But it is different depending upon the plan that is selected by your employee.
So, I have to think this, look at my, I wouldn't have known, I just taken note.
Or maybe Rob has it over there.
Yeah, just on the, let's see, on the Key Advantage 1000, which is the single employee only, or the employee only, that's the most popular one. It would go from $51 a month to $78. So $27 a month. That's the most popular plan that most of our folk, the most, has the most participation.
And I think you said about 70% of our employees.
Yeah, it came right, it hit right on 70% of eligible employees participate in one of the plans.
I just don't think, I mean, if we're talking about how we're already not comfortable with our salaries being high enough, I don't think passing on this cost to our employees is the best way to go about it. I mean, like you're saying, Dr. Pence, we may have to make hard decisions about this, but it certainly is something that I hope we wouldn't have to do, to pass this cost on to our employees to balance our budget.
Well, because then any increase that we did find for an instructional assistant, we lost.
If they're taking,
Because it'll go
if they're
to
taking
insurance.
insurance,
Yeah, well,
and they can choose which insurance plan they take. It's optional.
yeah.
We're also talking about paying out sick days, so that's a potential bonus for the year. So, I mean, we could want it all. Can't have it all. You don't get any of it free. You get to pay for it. So, it's a tit for tat.
So I guess what I would look at, and nobody's made a motion yet, but what I would suggest we consider is to amend the superintendent's budget by adding the communications specialist position that's listed on here. That would allow us to also add the special education position, and then add the additional reading specialist, and just make those two modifications would be my suggestion. I don't know what you guys think.
We just feel like, I'm just asking, right now, the ag teacher, I know it's needed, but that's kind of a secondary, and right now, Rosa Jeffries is making it with the teachers, so we're gonna have to sort
The
of.
little I see the rest of one, we might have to do that anyway, and the enrollment goes up, right? I mean, we're on the line with that, I think, right? That's done about our enrollment,
We would have to look back at those numbers.
so we may have to do that anyway.
But, I mean, we can also see that sometimes you have the subclasses will decrease, and so you're able to move a teacher. But that got us into a little trouble this year at Hilda, because when we looked at their numbers and we projected that we could move a teacher, when we moved a teacher, then they had an influx of move-ins, which caused their classroom numbers to go up. So then we were hiring a teacher mid-year because we had that class and that grade band had been consistent for a couple of years or 3 years, and we did not see the enrollment. And we were not projecting that. But when we had an influx of people move in, then that happened. So that happened to us this year.
I guess maybe those teachers around once the year has started is disruptive, but then that's not ideal.
No, it's not. I mean, we would want to move them now, and we will look at those, as we look at numbers and evaluate those things. And but at some point, Ressy's does continue to grow.
Our thoughts?
And as far as the motion, whatever you guys make, this is kind of, just so that everybody's clear, I mean, when you know, from the request for the request for labor and non-labor has been dwindled way down. I think we had how many positions requested? About 41.
41 or 42, something like that. Well,
And we've, in this budget, there's 4 from 41. But we have a lot of lists here, you know, we do have a little bit of a list going to say, so we have, you know, we understand that we can't get everything we want or everything that is asked for. And so we did take our non-labor down from 41, 42 asked to where we currently are now. With the non-labor, that's been dwindled, with the non-labor, that's been dwindled down as well. So, you know, we are actively been cognizant of what, you know, our community is, but also trying to address needs that we have. So I am fine with whatever the board wants to do with the budget, but I just wanted to let you know this is kind of really a bare bones budget.
I appreciate you saying that we started, you know, with 41 asked positions and we added 10% of that. I know we dwindled away, you know, how much was it that we took the non-labor though? It was,
I think it was about 1.8. Was it 1.8?
0.6, 1.8.
I can't remember off the top of my head, but that number 1.8 sticks in my head for some reason.
and then we took it down to, or everybody that had the school.
Right, you guys went through, it was a 1.8 initial decrease or from what the schools asked.
Gotcha, yeah, we took that down to 1.8 down.
Well, actually, 1,958,381.
Oh, that's because that extra 100,000.
Yeah.
For the
Yeah.
blanks, yeah.
Yep.
And then
It's always better.
put it in half,
1.9
down. So, great, it has been cut even though it's still a big, that's,
See, all of this is where I do still, and I say it every year, but I'm gonna say it again, I still object to the way in which the formation of this budget is handled, because there should have been a work session with these numbers where we could be discussing this and then, you know, pulling numbers for if you're increasing the pay rate for the IAs or the nurses, and our board could truly have worked on this and been made aware of 41 positions versus 4, and had our opportunity to discuss this at a time in which we could think about it, crunch numbers, digest it, and not be expected to vote on it all in the exact same night.
Well, we have had this at work sessions. We've had this page was at our joint work session. This has also been presented to us before in board docs. I've sent this out to you guys on the summaries of our budget committee meetings. I mean, this is not the first time we're seeing this.
No, we've seen vagaries. We have not had a work session on this.
This very document was at our work
State.
session. The work session with the Board of Supervisors.
That
on
is
March
not
12th.
that is not an us work session. We were all up on the dais. You said nothing the entire meeting, and we sat and discussed it with the board of supervisors. There was no agenda in which that we were handed paper documents when we were seated that we had not been able to review in advance. They are still not even posted afterwards, which I believe is a FOIA violation, but this is not the ideal setting for discuss, vote 5 minutes later.
This was also presented at our March 6th meeting and is on board docs with the exception of the conference budget because that
That
wasn't
was
available
not
yet.
a work session. This
we
is a
can
work
talk about
session.
This is an action item at our work session.
This is a work session. We had a public hearing on a budget that had not been presented yet at that time. So,
Do every year.
right, which is flawed every year. The entire process in which this budget is put together, and quite frankly, it goes all the way down to the state. The way the state puts it together is a really horrible way of doing things too, where you're guessing at ifs and maybes and what's going to pass. We still don't actually even know how much has passed. The entire process is broken. And I'm not saying that the manner in which that places It is literally a broken system.
Well, I mean, it could change right up until the end of June. Like, we can
Yeah,
get some
we've
breaking
seen that,
news
yeah.
that this isn't even, this isn't even real numbers that we're talking about.
Right.
And a lot of this, like the dwindling, I hate to use that word dwindling, but the cutting through the non-labor, that is things we did in our budget committee meetings, looking at those, at the positions, those were talks that were in the budget committee meetings of, these were things that they did administratively, and then they dwindled it down because obviously he knows, like, he got asked for 41 positions and he knows his schools, so he's like, okay, looking at the full school. So those things, those conversations have happened in our budget committees and in our joint budget committees and things like that. But, our role is to do the best we can. I think we need to push forward in supporting our students and continue to bring out the positives and work to make the edits and the adjustments successfully as we can go.
On the raises section, looking for trying to find my notes. The teachers are getting their step plus 3, but then it's a raise is inclusive of step. So that the 3% inclusive of step, does that includes all the way up through the administrators?
So
That's-
grades 1 through 6 will get the step plus 3.
Right.
Then all other pay scales will get inclusive of the step.
And 1 through 6 are teachers and instructional
Instructional
assistants.
assistants. Teachers and instructional assistants are grades 1 through 6, and then 7 through
But so
41 is your every other employee in the county.
does that include the superintendent?
That does
Not usually, right?
Not
That's
superintendent.
contractual. But it does include,
And so it includes everybody else that gets up.
Yeah.
Includes the administrators, the principals, like this lady.
so obviously 3% of $150,000 is a whole lot more money than 3% for our IAs at their $16,000. I've never liked how those raises are given in that manner.
Well, based on this salary scale, our instructional assistants at grade 6, that's what they're at. If they come in with 0 experience, they start at 17,254.
Okay.
And they go, through all the way up. And then if they have an associate's degree, they get an additional $1,000. If they have a bachelor's degree, they get an additional $1,900 on that current updated 23-24 pay scale.
And just so that everybody's aware that, they really work at when they hire IAs, that nobody starts on step.
Because they give experience. They work with
try to
them for
work
the
with them,
experience
get
that they've had.
I know Buck can talk a little bit. I know Jody's not here tonight, but Buck can talk a little bit about how he has worked with IAs.
Like if
and
they've
tried to get
been
them-
working at a daycare as an
try to get
assistant
them
or
as much as
teacher, they
experience
would
as they
get some
can to get
experience.
them moving up on the scale.
Yeah, normally they get years of experience for their education, and they also get years of experience for something similar in nature to an instructional assistant. You also have to remember that not necessarily are all the days stay on salary schedules. Some of the IA salary number of days is 184 days. So you're breaking down that salary, you have to break down by the number of days, and then it's going to an hourly rate until 6.5.
And do they work the same hours per day, or is it different than teachers? Because in some counties, teachers work 7.5 hours and IAs only work 7.
Teacher's contract is a 7.5-hour contract. The IAs, I don't want to state something that I'm not 100% on, but I would say it's going to be at least 7 hours. But it's 100. It's when you're looking at some of the, you have to look at the very bottom of each scale to identify the number of days that you break it down to, so that you are comparing apples to apples, because an IA's contract is either 184 or 183.
It's right here. It is.
So that number then would be divided out by the number of days. I'll say it's 70 for the hour.
Oh, 184. It's 184. Yeah, I'm looking at it. Well, and the other thing too, I think of is if you think about historically, I know that Dr. Ballinger, you really worked in the previous years to get maintenance, journeymen, those skills up to date. We continue to work with teachers. So I think it's definitely a point of discussion as we move forward, looking more closely at those instructional assistance scales. Absolutely, because
There's
you
other
know,
skills that we need to adjust.
and these scales, quite frankly, they needed a lot of work, and you have done a lot of work to improve them.
Well, I'd say
So,
that the team has done a lot.
yeah, so I think we definitely continue to look at that, yeah.
But we find holes, we need to
Yeah, and I
fix them.
and I think like that's part of the process there. I mean, I could sit here and nitpick these scales 100 ways over because I think we could eventually get to a better way we read them and stuff, but, but I definitely think putting that nurses, I don't disagree. Nurses in schools, no matter if you're here in Virginia, if you're in our neighboring states, nurses do not make enough money in school systems, period. I don't disagree at all with that. Teaching assistants, not at all, but I think it's just stuff to keep on our horizon. In our perfect world, we would make it all work beautifully, but we know we've got to do what our ask is for our immediate need and then just kind of go forth through conversations and if we need to,
Well, that's
once we get the numbers
on us,
finalized.
whereas I would really like to reassert for the fourth year in a row, that to have these conversations, to have the work session beforehand. So,
Pardon me, and I think that's something that we could certainly just plan for next year, either our January work session or February work session, whatever it is, like, then we're gonna have a report back from the budget committee at that point. We're too deep in it right now to make that correction, but certainly for
Right.
25.
no, I know. I brought it up at the very first meeting of the year, so that was one of the things. I mean, look, it is what it is in certain points. Like we're living in a time where we've got it's inflation, it's out of control, the cost of supplies is out of control. It's hopefully next year will be a year in which the economy is turning itself around and but at any rate, I won't beat a dead horse. I know I'm in the minority here, so let's get on.
Well, one thing just that you can also do is, we took that 100,000 out of the non-labor already. You can put that 100,000 back into the labor side. So that was something that we took out here just recently because we found out the state was going to pay for that. It's been, we've been talking about it being in as a number.
So basically that would be for the communication.
That's 100,000 that we additional that, as Mr. Valentine said, we're up to 1.9. We were at 1.8, and that's because we took that out. You can lose, if you want to put that back in labor, you can put that back in labor. And it would,
But we'll have to pay for that, Lexia, again at a year. I mean, the communications director isn't going away.
Right, well, in a year, you will have to,
Absorb it.
you're going to have to pay for that program.
I'm just trying to have
Yeah.
consideration for the taxpayers and the staff and the students and everybody. So the tennis courts are up. She's got that's up. They voted on as part
not
of
on
this,
there.
correct?
That
I
is-
had it on some paper.
So that's not
just
in the
on the-
budget.
that's
No,
in the
that's
future
all
CPI
CIP
plan.
stuff. So that's not operational.
Yeah.
So operational is our bread and butter. That's what that's our water that we drink. The CIP, that is, when you go by your favorite fountain drink, that's a little extra. So, good.
So I mean, it still puts taxpayers' pockets.
Right, but I think Mr. Smith said he was working on that at our last work session. Wicking the county, that's on it. Or, the bodily is help. All right. And typically we get funds back in our audit at the end of the year, and those traditionally have gone to the CIP.
No, I understand that.
Foundation, so.
But it's all taxpayer money. There is no such thing as free anything when it comes to the government. The government
Well, I don't
does
think
not
any of
generate-
us have said free.
The government does not generate
any of us have
any
said
income
free.
other than taking it from the taxpayer. That is the only source that government gets their income from, is the taxpayers. So when it comes time for those property tax bills to come out in June, and they get their car tax bills and all that stuff, like, we can put it off on this, as if it's the superintendent, it's the board of supervisors, they're the bad guys, but ultimately it is their budget that drives how much their tax bill will be when they open it in June.
What's the next, so it's going to go to the Board of, whatever we do to approve it, goes to the Board of Supervisors. I think they said they have a $12 million increase, right? There's a good chance they're going to say, we're not paying that, and then they kick it back to us. When's the next meeting, or are they going to kick it back to us that we have to say, well, we asked for an extra $2 million, they want to give us $50, when do we?
Right. So they will have their, public hearings. And then basically you'll kind of get notice when you see the publication.
Okay.
And it'll typically publish what the school division budget is. And then at that point, we kind of know we have to start working on things. Sometimes they may come down and say, hey, we're going to run this, or here's the number that we're going to go with. And then we start looking and then stop making decisions or whatever we need to do, or we say, okay, thank you, and we appreciate that. So it'll be after their hearing, then, because they then have to adopt their budget, and then they won't adopt until the state adopts a budget. So until the state budget is final, then the county adopts theirs, then we adopt ours.
Which might end up with a special meeting depending on what that timeline is, because it might not line up.
If everything goes well, typically the county will have a budget for us the end of April, latter half of April, and then you would approve the budget if it needs to be modified. And so we can get our contracts out to teachers the 1st of May, because that's when a lot of other school divisions do. And obviously to get that contract in the teacher's hand and get them signed up for next year is important. But I think the county will go ahead and set their tax rate. That's what they'll hold their first public hearing on the tax rate. And then, depending on what the state budget ends up being, that'll tell them what their total budget can be, and quite honestly, what ours will be too.
Okay. Thank you.
It's all dependent on Richmond and when things come from there.
I'm all defendant. You have no control over that.
Is there a motion on this budget?
I move that the superintendent's budget be approved as modified by reducing the budget for $100,000 in light of the state paying for Lexia, and by adding the communication specialist, the Rusty Jeffries elementary school teacher, and the reading specialist.
Is there a second on that motion? A second. Any discussion on that? And all those in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed, no?
No.
I abstain based off of process.
Is there,
I just wanted to say a quick reminder, our April 10th meeting, so we're not meeting that first week because Warren County Public Schools will be on spring break. So our next meeting will be April 10th, and it's going to be at Skyline Middle School. And that will allow us to take a quick recess to look at the Warren County Educational Endowment Showcase that will be happening that evening. So I just want to make everybody aware of a couple of those changes, the location change and the date change. The meeting will start at 6:30. And
Our meeting will start at 5:30. Our meeting always starts at 5:00.
We started, the public.
The public meeting will start at 6:30.
6:30, yes, ma'am. Sorry. You're right.
Yes. Okay.
Sorry.
is there a motion?
Did what post?
This motion is made that this open public meeting of the Warren County School Board become a closed meeting pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711. The school board desires to discuss the following matters in a closed meeting. Section 2.2-3711A1, discussion, consideration, or interviews of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of employees of the school board, specifically the personnel report and the personnel report addendum, and parent complaint 31524-1, and Section 2.2-3711A2, discussion or consideration in admission or disciplinary matters or any other matters that would involve the disclosure of information contained in the scholastic record concerning any student in Warren County Public Schools, specifically the incident at an athletic event.
Is there a second? Second. Mr. Valentine, could you do roll call, please?
Mrs. Salins?
Aye.
Mr. McFadden?
Aye.
Dr. Funk?
Aye.
Madam Chair?
Aye.
Mrs. Lowe?
Aye.
Thank you.